You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles.
And welcome everybody to this week's edition of Getting Color. This week we got some great news. Getting Color is coming to you live, baby, live from the Big Vito Brand. That's right, the Big Vito Brand has now acquired Getting Color from the Realm Network with Vince Russo. Just so there's no any rumor killers or anybody out there trying to start some scuff. Vince was just a little overwhelmed with his own brand, and he decided not to do Getting Color anymore. Not because it was a bad show, a good show, anything. It's just that the workload was too much. So I took it over, brought it over to the Big Vito Brand, and look who we have as the co-host with the most. His debut today on the Big Vito Brand. Rah rah, kiss kumbah. Look who we got here, Virtue. Virtue, how are you doing, my man?
What's up, Vito? And you can call me Mr. Stallworth. You can call me Virtue. I don't care. Now, you said debut on Getting Color, but I've been part of the Big Vito Brand with Virtue's brand of wrestling for a while now. So it's great to be here. Big shoes to fill for Vince Russo, maybe? Who knows?
Big shoes.
I can do it.
Big shoes, kid. Big shoes.
I can do it. I've studied his work. I like him.
I didn't study his work. Now, I know that, Vince Russo, everybody says he kills territories, he kills towns. Well, just don't kill the Big Vito Brand, all right?
No, dude, it's growing. It's awesome. I love contributing for you guys. I don't know how close Noel is, but hey, Noel, what's up? I know you're there listening.
Background being the voice of reason right now.
The producer, I like it.
All right.
So, yep, I'm game for whatever you want to talk about.
All right, here we go, guys. Getting Color is that show that talks the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's about really hearing what is real in wrestling. It's not about somebody trying to get a job, somebody trying to get employed, not about kissing ass. The same concept that was with Vince Russo and I when we did Getting Color together is the same concept we're keeping here. We're not changing nothing. It's going to be a great, successful show. We might get a couple more rants going in here because I know Virtue hasn't been privy to the Big Vito rants. Well, we got a lot of good topics to talk about. First, we're going to start off by doing the wrestling roundup, and I do my own internet scurrying and get my info, and I have my sources. It's not all Dave Meltzer, Anyway, yeah, exactly. All right. So this week, Mr. Stallworth, I would like to talk about your thoughts on Impact Wrestling. We're going to start with Impact, and there was just a match on there with Johnny Impact and Sami Callihan. I want to get your thoughts on the, what would you say, on how Impact is growing or it's decreasing. I want to get you're closer to more the indie scene than I am. Yeah, I want to get your thoughts on what the indie scene thinks of Impact Wrestling.
So when we think of, I hear a little bit of feedback, or is that just me?
No, you're good. It's me typing.
Oh,
no, it's her typing. Go ahead.
So when I think of Impact, it used to be a bigger deal. When Jeff Jarrett ran it, Dixie Carter, it had its home base in Universal Studios, and it felt like the B to WWE's A. You know what I mean?
Right.
It had writers. Now it feels more indie. Now I know Don Callis is doing a lot of work there. I think there's some other people. It's changed. I think. What's the network that it's on now? Do you guys even know? It was on Pop. It's been on so many different networks.
Is it on America's something?
No. Destination America was before Pop TV. It might be on. That's the problem. It's on the Fight app and some random TV network. And yes, it's better than not being on TV. Any indie promotion would love to be telecast, but some of them just do shows in front of 150, 200 people. So when I think of Impact now, it's long gone, in my opinion, from the days that what it was when it was TNA. It had the NWA titles originally. That was cool. I do like Sami Callihan, to be honest with you. He seems like he's one of those guys that really can get under fan skins because he goes after the darlings that they like. So I do like Sami. I don't know what your opinion is on him. But when I think of Impact, it's like I have to search the internet to see clips from it. And I hope
Voice of Reason has come up with some info on Impact Wrestling. Voice of Reason?
It's an outdoor hunting station.
Pursuit Channel, outdoor hunting.
Pursuit. I was going to say Discovery. Pursuit, that's it. Yeah.
So that means they're this close to Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, and you see, like, look at the beard right here. You're probably like, dude, if you're going to be on Getting Color, you got to shave. You got to look the part. Don't be a neck beard. But I don't know, Vito. I'm interested in your take on TNA because from like the small indie scene, from the fans' perspective, to me, it just feels like an indie show that happens to have some TV time.
Well, I'm going to tell you, ever since Dixie Carter lost the reins of TNA, I just think they lost all credibility. I don't think they're still a wrestling company. They're still, they're still on TV, but it doesn't have that aura. It doesn't have that oomph. It doesn't have that I want to talk about it. It's kind of like a silent wrestling group and really doesn't get much play. I mean, Johnny Impact is a champion. That's not taking away anything from his talent or anything. I just think that, for the market they're in, I don't think they're doing much business. And I just think that right now, I think the business could do a little better. But for what they're doing, for what they've, been, last 6 months of TNA, you really don't know they're on TV. They're really not getting a lot of play. So, that's why I figured I'd start off with that, which leads us into NXT. Now, NXT is a good brand. They have a lot of good talent. The problem with NXT is they blow those guys up and they make a great TV show. And I've been saying this for years, that they can be their own brand on their own channel and get ratings, but they don't let it happen. What are your thoughts on NXT and their possibility of going full-time and being an impact player in the wrestling world?
So, it's interesting that you say that because I want to disagree with you so we can argue and debate. But I wrote a column about this a while ago, a couple of years ago, that NXT, the N in NXT stands for niche, in my opinion. And it's a great product for that fan demographic, but I don't see those wrestlers that are learning that stuff there, that are getting over with those fans, translating to Vince McMahon's vision on the main roster. So
but I've always said, now you make a good point there, I've always said it is a cult following like ECW. Mm-hmm. It is a cult following. But they have a big enough cult following to be their own brand.
And I agree with that. And it's interesting because I see Triple H runs it. For what we know, that's his baby down there. He's already branched it to UK. So I don't know if this is something they're going to continue to do to make NXT territories. Will they do NXT Japan? That's interesting. And I think if they do that, they have to make its own brand, keep it separate. It just doesn't sell to the masses because remember that one time when NXT, the weekly show, they aired it on USA Network. It drew about 800,000. Now, compared to Impact, compared to all those other companies that are on TV, those numbers are good. Compared to, and I say this lightly because WWE's main roster numbers are down to 2 million, but that's still a big difference, Vito. That's over 1 million people that did not tune in for NXT. That tells me it needs to stay where it's at and develop into its own brand. I like that idea. I think most of those guys, most of them, they're smaller wrestlers. They got the indie feel to their work. And I think when it comes to the main roster and they get up there, it's lost in translation. Now, you would know this better than I would because you've been in the big locker rooms with the big-time stars. Do you think that WWE is already doing what AEW is claiming to do. Is it AEW? Because I hear somebody said A&W like the root beer.
Right.
NXT is already AEW in my opinion. That's that same fan demographic. They're already doing 5 or 6 big pay-per-view type shows a year, which are the takeover events in arenas with 10,000 plus people. So to me, WWE already beat AEW to the punch with NXT. That's just my opinion. But you're right. I think it should be its own brand.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Just from looking at what they do in NXT, with the guys on that roster and the guys, with the people there, how they get over and how they're with their crowd. Same thing like when I was in ECW. We had our own cult following. Everybody had their fan favorites, and I think the same thing goes for the NXT brand. I think giving a chance, a 6-month run on a network, I think their fan base will grow over 1 million, possibly competing with the 2 million that WWE gets. But you have to let them run with the ball, and just doing it on a one-time basis and saying, okay, now you make a point that, AEW, which is the next topic we're going to talk about, AEW did one successful show under their banner, and they drew 10,000 people. Okay, 10,000 cult followers. 10,000 people.
All in had New Japan talent and Ring of Honor talent. AEW is not going to have all that because of contracts. So I think it's going to be hard. I think All In was easier because they used everybody from different promotions. I don't think AEW is going to have access to all of that talent.
We did a show about AEW a couple weeks ago, Vince and I, about Cody Rhodes talking about unionizing, killing wrestling, and I think that he overstepped his bounds when he said that. Being that he is an executive now, an executive in training, I think he overstepped his bounds by saying that you don't need unions in wrestling and the health benefits and all this other stuff, and that the boys were going to write for themselves. Now, being that what you're going to say, the boys are going to write for themselves, the boys kill it for themselves. And the old saying goes, the boys ruin the business for the boys. Now, given them, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on how they, being AEW, with their brand, letting the boys write their own, TV, opposed to not having a TV writer? What are your thoughts on that?
It's going to blow up. It might work in the short term, right? Cody's going to do what Dusty used to do, book, right? And I know who was arguing with our buddy Vince, Disco. Disco was arguing with Vince about writing and booking, and anybody can write wrestling. Well, true and not true. So here's what I think: all these rumored people, all these disgruntled WWE wrestlers, these free agents, they're all going to flock to AEW. The cons are going to pay big contracts, whatever. Cody's making these promises of health benefits. What's going to happen, Vito? In my opinion, it's going to get too big. It looks good now, but all these wrestlers that are craving for that spot, they might not sign their contract with WWE like Ambrose and leave. They're all going to go to AEW. Most of them will. What's going to happen to that locker room? You've been in locker rooms, so I know you know this. It's going to grow. The egos are going to get big. They're going to write for themselves. Egos writing for themselves. People are going to get pissed off. It's going to hurt the product, in my opinion, unless you have a better structure of television, which does include writers. And again, I'm a creative guy, so I'm more on the Team Russo writing than I would be Disco wrestlers could book the show. I know they both can do it.
But you know what? And like Disco probably, like when he made the comment, wrestlers can book the show. Wrestlers can book the show. But when the wrestlers were in charge, just like they were in WCW, and they kept taking Vince out, they took Bischoff out, and then they kept putting themselves in, writing for themselves. If you book, you book. If you wrestle, you wrestle. You can't do both because somebody's going to suffer. and somebody's going to go down. And unfortunately, it was WCW closing and killing off wrestling and being bought by Vince because the product was, wasn't stabilized. And I think when you have AEW, they're not going to be stabilized in the fact that they don't have one person in charge to dictate what's going to go down the pipe. Everybody can talk about Vince McMahon. Everybody can talk about WWE. But the one great thing about it is there's one boss only, one way to do things. That's Vince McMahon's way. And when you start off a company like AEW, where you have we're going to do it this way, but that's not wrestling 101. And just because your father was a booker doesn't mean you could be a booker too.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. You were in ECW. How different was ECW backstage and how they ran things and what it became as they got closer to closing doors to WCW? I know it was a smaller scale, but did that politics, did the egos shine through there as well, or did Heyman have a grasp on it till the bitter end? We know how it went in WCW, right? The inmates ran the asylum. I mean, you were there. So what was the differences like between ECW
here's the difference in ECW, guys. They were still putting out a good product. The guys weren't. I wasn't there, but there was one guy in charge, Paul Heyman. That's why I was successful. That's why I was successful all those years. Paul Heyman was in charge. Paul Heyman was the brains behind the scene. And we all knew who the boss was. So everything went through Paul. Did it have its moments where where there's some politics and was some, buddyism and all? I'm sure there was. I'm not going to ruin the mystique of ECW and come out and say a bunch of lies and stuff. No, it was a cult following wrestling brand that captured the imagination of the world, and it was something great because people today still clamor for ECW. You still hear the chants in arenas of ECW. So that's something that was done right. How many arenas do you go in and you hear WCW chants? You never do. You hear ECW chants.
Yep.
Paul Heyman struck gold with that. Paul Heyman was the mastermind behind it, and he created something great. He created a dynasty. He created something that was unique at the time. And David, you go to all the indie shows in the Cleveland area, and do guys try to emulate the ECW brand when you're out there?
What a segue, Vito. Absolutely. There is a promotion here called Absolute Intense Wrestling, AIW, and it's ran by John Thorne, and their model is insane stuff, like ECW was. Now, of course, they have the wrestlers that do the flipping and flying because that's what we get in indies now, but AIW is the Cleveland version mini ECW. It is. And people go and want to chant AI-dub, AI-dub. Johnny Gargano came out of AIW, So
Right.
And a lot CM Punk, a lot of guys, Colt Cabana, a lot of guys have worked in AIW. So it's got that notoriety, at least in the Midwest. Just like out in California, they got Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. And that's probably like an ECW out there too, where the Bucks used to do a lot of matches and the fans would actually get to walk up and slap the apron. They didn't even have a ringside. Literally, I think the fans in the front row were right on the ring. Crazy. So they're trying to, ECW must have been something, Vito, because it's still being emulated today.
Yep, I got to tell you. And now we're going to bring our attention to some interesting stuff that's going on in the WWE. All right, now I would like to pick your brain about what you thought and what you saw of that Lars Sullivan. I mean, he was big, he was monstrous, he came up through the ranks. They built him up to have some strong promos, and then he had a panic attack. Now, from where you were sitting, were you just excited as the fans, or were you part of the aura of this could be the next and upcoming Brock Lesnar, or were you just saying, this guy's going to be a flash in the pan? What are your thoughts on Lars Sullivan?
Flash in the pan. Like I watched him in NXT. He wasn't there that long. I know when Strowman came through, he really wasn't on the NXT product. They brought him through fairly quickly. Braun put him with the Wyatts. And he was with the mask on, the whole deal with the Wyatts. And I was like, okay, that's a cool way to introduce a big guy like that. So that, to me, I was fine with. Lars, I like to think this is a work with his anxiety. Vito, have you ever ran across that in the business? A wrestler getting his opportunity for the big payday, the big spot? Because I heard that he was rumored to wrestle Cena, gets to Raw, and just goes AWOL. I want to think it's a work because I can't believe that that's true.
Well, I'll give you two instances where you talk about guys that have anxiety. First was, I would say John Heidenreich was probably one of the most high anxiety guys you have out there. And then you have Chris Masters on his debut with the WWE. His first match, he was so nervous. He had food poisoning that day, and he broke Stevie Richards' nose on the finish. 1,000 pieces. Smash and Rooney.
I mean, I believe it can exist. It's just, it sucks that we have to know it. Like, because before, when kayfabe was real, before the internet, we would have never knew this about Lars Sullivan. If he would have had stage fright, then they would have dealt with that behind the scenes, and it might have took another 3 months. They would have figured out how to get him comfortable. Then we would have saw him. The fact now we know this. How do they bring him in? The fans are going to eat him alive, call him a coward, or unless they, like I said, I'd love to think this is a work, Vito, because when I think of pro wrestling, I want to think everything's a work. I'm old school, even though I'm 38 years old. I'm old school. I want to think everything's still a work and kayfabe exists. I want to think WWE planted this story to make him seem like he's got some demons, so when he debuts, it could give him more edge.
Well, you want to hear off the top of my head what could be his new gimmick?
What's that?
Okay. Lars Sullivan, he's an animal. Boo! I'm afraid of the dark.
And like scared of mice and jumping up on stools and stuff. That's what, but to me, if this is real, right, if he really had a panic anxiety attack, he comes back. That's what Vince McMahon does, right? I've learned enough from listening to you, Russo. Vince is going to exploit his weakness and put it on TV. He's going to make that. Watch, Vito, you called it. That's what they're going to do. That's what Vince is going to do with Sullivan. Oh, my God, I see it now. He's going to be afraid of everything.
I can't be afraid of everything, right?
It might work. It might work.
Him being that scary and ferocious, if he goes on a winning streak, what's the best way to get to lose? Take a mouse out of your pocket, throw it in the ring, let him do a dance, hightail it back to the thing. He could be afraid of girls. You know what I mean? Get crazy in the ring. There are original stuff to think about. Original stuff. Talking about original stuff, let's switch our thoughts to Daniel Bryan and his organic championship. What do you think? I mean, that is something phenomenal, something creative, out of the box. When you can be yourself in wrestling, you are the best you. There's nobody who imitates you. You can be the best Big Vito because that's how you act from Staten Island, New York. Thug life, being a badass. And you know what? It came across good. Now, being with that said, I'm not going to sit here and say, I wore dresses at home. But that just comes with being a quality worker and somebody who believes in himself, that believes in their work to get something over. But when you talk about...
Let me ask you a question. When you were in the dress gimmick, right, whether it was Vince McMahon's rib or whatever to you, how long did you do that on TV? Was it a year, 8 months, a year? Like, how long did you write? Dude, seriously. So regardless of what their intent was for you with that gimmick, they kept you in it for a year because it was drawing buzz, right? It worked. So, everyone, Big Vito wore a dress on TV. And then they forget to say for 1 year. That in the wrestling business, that's a long time. You know what I mean?
No, it is a long time. Undefeated for 4 months. You know, most notarized, what do you call it? Most notarized pro wrestler, pro athlete around. When they seen that, they knew. You know what I mean? They didn't have post for Playgirl magazine, more notoriety. Did a lot of great vignettes. Did a lot of great things. Had a lot of TV time in the dress. So who's the rib on in the end? Wasn't on me. It was everybody else. If it was a rib, and you know what? If it was, thank you very much. It added to my popularity. If it wasn't, thank you very much. It was a great idea. I pulled it off.
Well, see, you pulled it off, and like, you know, I've heard stories about Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster. He didn't give a shit about it, so his flopped. You made yours work. Now going to Daniel Bryan. So the interesting thing from my point of view with this, I knew the yes, yes, yes thing was going to fizzle out. Today's wrestling fans get bored quickly, and as electric as it was at WrestleMania 30 for his time, right? They broke the Wyatt family. He was going to join the Wyatt family. They broke that angle up just so they could course correct Batista winning the Rumble because of all the heat that he got when he won it. So I'm glad they turned Bryan heel. I agree with some other people that said they thought they turned Bryan heel just so he would face to win the WWE title, so he'd face Brock at Survivor Series as a rib for not going to Saudi Arabia, so Brock could manhandle him and throw him around. I believed that at first, and look the way that match happened, Vito. I don't know if you watched it. First half of that match, Brock tossed Daniel Bryan around. I mean, granted, he's a worker. He's knowing what he's going to do.
I watched it. I thought it was a good match. I thought it was a solid match. But
danger, though.
When you talk about being organic and being different, I could see Bray Wyatt coming back and Daniel Bryan following the flock of the Wyatts.
So it's interesting you say that. So Bryan's in this new Earth group, right? Him and Eric Rowan, who was in the Wyatt family. All of a sudden, the new championship title made out of hemp, right? And I like that they're doing this with Bryan to make him a heel. But I think if you're going to do it, they need to really make him. He needs to belittle the fans more. He needs to go knock Cokes and popcorn out of their hands onto the floor. Really needs to sell like this vegan lifestyle because, like you said, you bring up Bray Wyatt. I have no idea. It's on the dirt sheets. He's been back doing dark matches. I don't know why he's not on TV yet, but there you have something. Him and Luke Harper. They could have a program with Bryan and Rowan. It could be like the Wyatts. Who knows where it will end? But again, do we have that type of creativity and outside-the-box thinkers? Do they have writers that are willing to tell Vince these ideas, or are they all afraid to not give them these ideas that would at least be different?
Well, here's the greatest idea of all, and I'm just sitting here thinking, okay, let's go with this. You bring back the Wyatts, right, and Daniel Bryan follows the flock. Bray Wyatt needs some herbs and essence to put in his witch's brew. Takes the championship belt and melts it in the brew.
Oh, that'd be great.
The championship belt is a bag of ashes, and he wears it around his neck.
Yep. Well, I mean, we need something. You have so much talent, and this is really what irks me. I hear AJ Styles refuting his contract extension. Like, it's like the fans in the dirt sheets have to be in the know of who might be leaving here to go here. Can't fans just watch the product and see what unfolds organically? Why do they have to be part of what's going to happen, what wrestlers are going to do for their families? That's what I can't stand. And so this is an interesting time, Vito, that you bring up all these promotions because I want to see who stays in WWE. I want to see who ends up leaving. But at the same time, I don't want to predict it. I don't want Wade Keller telling me Dean Ambrose is not signing his contract extension and then WWE double downing that and then saying, oh, by the way, Ambrose is leaving after WrestleMania. Remember the days, Vito, when you could just watch the characters on TV, see what they did week to week, but never worry about where they were going?
That's right. Because kayfabe was in effect. Now, you bring up Dean Ambrose. Now, Dean Ambrose has had, I would say it was up, down career, okay? Where he's had successful runs with titles. He had the Shield run. He had a singles run. He had a good program with Rollins. As soon as the rumors came out that he possibly was leaving, now all of a sudden it's Job City. Now, could he go to AEW? Possibly. Could he go to Japan? I don't think so. Because I don't think Japan is his style. I could see him going over to AEW. I don't see him going over to TNA. I maybe go to Ring of Honor. Maybe.
See, I group Ring of Honor in with New Japan. Like, to me, the New Japan is just Ring of Honor Far East. You know what I mean? They're almost like one company. But it's funny because they sold out the Garden, but now a lot of these wrestlers, where I think maybe the fans that bought tickets to that show, like the Young Bucks and Cody, and who knows where Kenny Omega is going to go, they might not be at that show WrestleMania weekend at the Garden if they're all working for AEW. So, yeah, I just don't want to hear where these wrestlers are going to go. Like, if I'm going to watch a product, I'm going to criticize a product, I want to watch it for what it is, what their current roster is, and then if one day they say, Dean says, I'm not signing an extension, I'm going elsewhere, well, let's let it happen. Let's not talk about it. And then if he shows up here or shows up there, then we can react as it happens.
No.
Dude, he turned down 5 years, over $1 million a year. That's nuts. You know that. That's nuts. That's guaranteed money.
Well, there was a company once upon a time that was going to be the competition for Vince McMahon, and I was an original member of that company. It was called XWF. We had 15 guys they picked. I was one of those, me, Buff, Hogan, Kurt Hennig, the Nasty Boys, Greg Valentine, Roddy Piper, Jerry Lawler, Jimmy Hart.
Where was this based out of?
They were taped out of Orlando, okay? And after the first set of shows, the first weekend, they did infomercials. We had 15, 8, and 5,000 our first weekend out.
Nice.
Now, can't get any bigger than that. You're talking, oh my God, this is going to be it. What happens? He signed Jerry Lawler back as an announcer. He signed Kurt Hennig back. Signed Roddy Piper back. Signed Hulk Hogan back. The end of the company.
This was like early 2000s?
Yep, 2000, 2001,
right about,
2002.
Yeah. Well,
that
Vince,
was the name of that too.
Yep. I mean, Vince, it's funny because when he was threatened before and he didn't have the money, he had to let wrestlers go, right? And they all went to WCW. But here's the interesting part, Vito. When Vince did that, he let the talent go, but part of him had to have known that the egos were going to drive some of that talent back. And what happened? That's exactly what happened. So he started the Attitude Era. Our little buddy named Vince Russo helped him with that, as well as other people. And he ended up with less wrestlers on the roster. I won't say less talent because WWF and the Attitude Era was loaded with talent, but they had less, right? WCW clearly, if you count the cruiserweights, all the females, everybody had 3 times as many people on the roster. Look what happened. Implosion within with the egos.
Now, I want to tell you something. When you talk about, the rosters and you talk about stuff like that, and Vince letting people go back then, there is an old wives' tale. Vince will let you go. But when you come back, he's going to give you what you want, so you sign. But he's going to humiliate you. Did it
Yes.
to Patty. He did it to, he's doing it now to Kurt Angle. And the way they're jobbing him out is something that makes me sick to my stomach when I see it.
Yep. And it's going to happen to Jeff Jarrett, too, because think about this. Angle came back for the Hall of Fame. Now he's getting jobbed out. Jarrett came back for the Hall of Fame, right? Give them what they want. give him that respect. You know, hey, you're a legend in the company, but then they end up on TV getting humiliated. So I think the same thing's going to happen with Jarrett.
And it's happened to every single guy who's left. Scott Steiner, he had that incredible run. He was the main eventing with Goldberg. They brought him to WWE. He jobbed for 6 weeks to Triple H, getting the crap beat out of him. Never on the upswing. And then what happened? They got rid of him. Just to do it, just to humiliate him. And I think when you sign a deal with the devil, not that it's a bad thing, but when you sign that contract and you leave, and then you're going to come back, and you go, oh, Vince, brother. In the back of his mind, he already has a game plan to ruin you, make you grovel. Dean Ambrose is going to leave. Dean Ambrose will return. CM Punk left. CM Punk is going to return.
Do you think it would be AEW, if anything at all?
He's going to return.
In WWE, interesting. I'd like to see it. Think about it. We know so much about what happened. Him showing up there would be like it'd be a holy shit moment, because you would wonder, how are things going backstage? You know what I mean? Punk and Vince?
It'll be a holy shit moment. It'll be one of those moments. Everybody would be on the bandwagon. Everybody be kissing him, hugging babies, doing politics. Yep. It'll be CM Punk Day for about 6 months. Hit month 7. You're sorry you ever came back, my friend.
Dude, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Jarrett, because we know when he left, he jobbed out to China. He got some extra cash for that, from what we know, right? I mean, I think Vince vouched that happened. He's back there now. So I don't think Vince McMahon forgot, unless he's got our Alzheimer's and it's set in. I'm
going to tell you, Vince Russo knows. I've been told by Jeff, told by Vince. Guys, he held him up for $250,000. No way he was putting over a woman. Wanted a cashier's check. Got the cashier's check that day. Went out, did the job, went on his merry way. But that's without saying, he did pay a price all those years. He did get taken out. No notoriety, no nothing. Old, JEFF, JARRE, a double T Jeff Jarrett was never mentioned on TV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he paid a price. That, and then now you're getting guitar to death by our friend there. And that's just the beginning of what's going to happen. Yeah. But getting away from that, I would like to see how the Brock Lesnar thing is going to go. Now, I'm a big fan of Brock Lesnar. I think he's legit. He's a badass. He's real. He is what we need more of in wrestling. I don't think the WWE, well, it is a fact, WWE has nobody else to feed him. That's why they put Finn Balor in there. That's the way they say it. Say that one more time.
Roman got sick.
I mean, it is AJ Styles. Then it was supposed to be AJ Styles, and they substituted AJ Styles for Daniel Bryan. Then Braun Strowman has been to the plate about 3 or 4 times, and he hasn't hit the home run yet. And I don't think WWE believes in him to be the face of the company. I think he lost it. And when he was hot, and I would say about 6 months ago, when he was on his peak, WWE didn't give him the ball, and I don't think he'll ever get the ball. Right now, Brock Lesnar is the WWE. He is the man that makes it run for the men's division. But they have nobody for him to play with. Bobby Lashley is not in his league. Bobby Lashley is, U.S. champion, American champion, everything but WWE work.
Why do you think that? What do you think keeps Bobby Lashley? He's got that look, but what do you think? Is his face too nice of a guy with his smile? Is it he just doesn't talk well? Obviously Brock
doesn't have charisma.
Okay. I see that. I see what you mean.
He's a great athlete. He has all the attributes. He could probably do a lot more things than what he's doing. He does not have the charisma or the charm or that savoir faire or the mic skill to carry himself as a world champion. Just doesn't have it. Jinder Mahal didn't have it at first. Learned how to get it. Once he finally got it, it was too late in the game to save his job. But when he was growing strong and he was giving good promos and people believed, hey, the world was his oyster. And then for some reason, he pissed in somebody's Cheerios and he went back down to Job City. And it happens.
And I agree with Brock. Brock is legit. When Roman went out with leukemia, I said Brock needed to win that title back for stability, and they put it back on him. I had so many people telling me, "Oh, you're an idiot. There's no way they're going to do that." Who is the current Universal Champion heading into WrestleMania? Brock Lesnar. And I said it because I know WWE's tendencies from watching them and studying them, and that's exactly what Vince went to when his boy Roman got sick, which I don't want to question that, Vito, with Roman, because I know he had leukemia. I know he had it again. But it's funny, like, he's already filming big movies with The Rock. Like, do you think that he had, like, a mild case and it went back in remission already? I don't think he's as sick as – I'm not saying he didn't have it. I believe that it came back. But I think the doctor's like, hey, we're going to put you on this treatment plan. It'll be gone by the first of the year. Isn't it weird to you that he's already doing
you got to remember something. When you're in remission with something or you're fighting something and you're not doing anything strenuous, you have to, hold back from physical activity because you don't know how bad your immune system, how bad your body breaks down. You don't know if you're going to be able to recover. So him going to do movies, that's a nice cushy thing. Okay. Nice, a good, safe way for him to make a living. Okay. I mean, does it look kind of weird? Probably. Is it like in the best interest of him? Yes. So if you look at it from the way I look at it, yeah, okay, it might be a little weird, but he's making a living, he's doing his thing. I mean, his cousin is The Rock, so at least The Rock is, flipping him a couple of movie parts, to supplement his income and feed his family. So, I mean, it's all good in that way.
I just wanted your take on that. Like, I thought him being in a movie with leukemia already, to me, I feel like he's going to announce soon, hey, I beat it. It's back in remission. That's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know what? He could be doing that, and then it could be a feel-good story to where he's beating it. He conquered leukemia once again, comes back to wrestling. Movies were his therapy. Thanks to Rock, the hoopla. Remember, when you have The Rock involved and you make a comeback, who better to be a spokesperson for you than The Rock? So you're talking, you got some good stuff right there. You know what I mean? So that's probably maybe a year down the road that you even thinking about that. On to the next thing I'd like to cover with you, okay? Being that this is some good conversation, we're being honest, we're talking the truth. This is Getting Color on the Big Vito Brand, coming to you live, baby, live, with my new co-host with the most, David Badass Stallworth, okay? Badass Stallworth, that's it. Even though he's freezing his ass off in Cleveland, it's still badass. You know what I mean? But anyway, David, let me ask you. Now, I know that, you being a fan and you being involved in the wrestling business and you do write a good column. We had a discussion how you like to write, as opposed to doing doing the videos and podcasting. Now, when you get to that point where you think, okay, I'd rather put it on paper or I'd rather do a podcast, what goes through your mind at that point? What makes you want to write and what makes you want to podcast? So
I started writing for NoDQ.com, and it was, very, very opinionated columns. And I took the pro-Roman Reigns stance. That's how I got my notoriety over there. Everybody hated Roman, right? But here's old Virtue writing and defending this guy. And I was saying, dude, he's just as big of a star in this era as Cena was during his run. but it's a different time. Roman's the star in the era of social networking and streaming, right? It's not about the big names to draw. The demographic of WWE's changed, which we can talk about that on another show. But I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. But you gotta, to me, when I was in college, it was like the writing professor would always say, try to do 1,000 words, 1,200 words. And you'd use your little Microsoft Word. And as I was getting close to 1,000, I knew I was wrapping up my ideas. But you have to go back, proofread, make sure the sentences look good. And that's a lot of work. And I could have spent a whole evening putting a 1,500-word column up. 5 hours go by. And sure, I do other things in between. But it's like my night went, boom, gone. Then I was like, somebody introduced me to doing videos. I was like, shoot, I can talk a little bit. Why not? And I did a video. We wrapped one up in an hour. I watched it back. I listened to myself. I got all of my ideas that it would have took me 5 hours to write a column done in 1 hour filming a video. That's why I transitioned to that, Vito. But it's weird because there must still be a lot of people that like to read these days. They're like, Virtue, when you bring in the written column back? So I don't know. Sometimes when you write, Vito, you can get certain thoughts through differently than when you quickly shout them out. I like doing this. I mean, I think when you came over to No DQ and you worked with the panel and the review team over there, it was awesome. And now this opportunity came about. I'd choose this over writing any day because you get to show people. Like, now I know you and Noel put the audio up, but you still put the video up so people that like to watch us, sometimes when you listen to somebody talk, you hear them talk, like, okay, I got what they're saying. Then when you see them and you see their facial expressions, their hands moving all around, which I know, doesn't Vince do that?
Erroneous.
Yeah. So it's different ways, Vito. I am going to write another column, but I don't do those as often because to me, that takes a whole evening. I could only imagine what like people like Vince Russo went through, Ed Ferrara, any TV writer.
Can I tell you something? You got a gift to be a writer, and your best thoughts will come when you put it on paper. Never give up your writing.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it back. And maybe if I do one every now and again, it'll give me that drive to do them weekly. But, while I'm waiting to get there, these videos are a great outlet. So I do enjoy doing them. And Vito, let's be honest, when I wrote columns, and that's all I did, I had 250 Twitter followers. Once I got on video, I have like almost 1,500. Not that that's a lot, but, to me, I'm like, wow, I'm on video and people are starting to hear what I have to say.
But what you're good at, now when you do something and you're good at it, you don't do it for the followers. You do it because of your enjoyment, because it enriches you, it enlightens you, it broadens your horizon, it stimulates your mind, makes your intelligence. It gives you something inside when you start writing. You see it come out, and you let ideas flow, and you can put pen to paper. That's being creative. And then when you sit back and watch other people enjoy your writing and your scripture, I think that is self-satisfaction that you can't get anyplace else.
It is. You know what turned me off? Whoa, I heard like a wind tunnel in there. You know what turned me off from writing besides the extra work of proofreading and all that? It's the fact that I would have certain people that would misinterpret the written word, where I always felt I was better at explaining things in actual dialect, like visually, verbally. So, and then seeing Twitter wars happen because people don't know how to read well, it just infuriated me, and that's another reason why I went to video. But I'm going to take your advice on that. Matter of fact, I was ahead of the curve. You saw me tweeting that I'm getting ready to put a new column out soon. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, I would like to we got a little bit time left, and I would like to catch up with another subject that I thought was very interesting for this week. Nia Jax entering the Royal Rumble in the men's section. Now, everybody has their thoughts on men and women mixing. Men shouldn't hit women, and vice versa, domestic violence and all that stuff. And Nia Jax is no slouch in the ring. She broke the man's face, as we call it in wrestling, because now we just go ahead and call it a man, Becky Lynch. That that was kind of like short-lived. I thought they could have did something more with that by making a hot punch gimmick or doing something like that. I'll break your face streak, where she's breaking the faces of all the girls. You know, Becky Lynch comes to save the day, but what do I know? You know, I'm not a writer. Anyway, I just think her evolving into that with the women's revolution coming on like gangbusters and strong, with the possibility of two women headlining WrestleMania, I took it as a good and I took it as a bad. I took it as a good because she stepped up to the plate and she went in there and she competed. I took it as a bad because I think it exposed a little bit of wrestling. You get hit with a super kick and you don't fall. Now, I'm not saying she's not tough. I'm not saying anything. But when you look at it from a realistic standpoint, somebody gives you a super kick to the jaw, man or woman, you're going to fall if it's placed right. And back in the day when Shawn Michaels hit you with a super kick because it was a finish, everybody fell. So I think that took away a little bit. I thought she took a great bump from Randy Orton on the RKO. I think she did the 619 great. Can she go in there and throw blows with the guys? No. I don't want to see that. But for her to do a couple spots with the guys where she's selling and they're all throwing her out of the ring, I thought it was good. What do you think about the Nia Jax being in the Royal Rumble? What were your thoughts?
All right, I have a lot on this one here. So, regarding Nia, she obviously was the one they chose to be in there female-wise because she was the biggest. I remember one Vito LaGrasso last year saying that Carmella or whoever, Alexa Bliss, whoever had the Money in the Bank contract for the women should cash it in on a man. And people were like, you're stupid, Vito, dumb idea. Yet here we are, right, less than a year later, and a woman competed in the Royal Rumble. And what's the prize for the men's Royal Rumble? To go on to WrestleMania to face Brock Lesnar or whoever for the championship. So therefore, they did that. That's not far-fetched from the idea you proposed. Here's where I think WWE screwed up. Should have been Becky Lynch. Now, I know she's small. You could have had her in there. The same type of thing could have happened when all the guys were down and vulnerable. She could have went in, threw the cruiserweight out, finally did a couple things. If she's the man, if she's going by the man, they should have had her take that spot. You tell me that wouldn't have been over big time. Those marks, you don't think so?
No, because she did the job in the match, and you can't have her do two jobs in one night. You got to get her over. Where the people want to see her with a hand raised. It's open. They forgot the fact that she lost to Asuka, which everybody overlooked. So it would have been a bad booking thing. That's why they didn't put her in that spot. But go ahead.
Well, okay, so she tapped to Asuka. She shouldn't have been put in the Women's Royal Rumble, in my opinion, then. They should have just let Charlotte win that. They could have wrote themselves, if they wanted Becky against Ronda and against Charlotte, wherever they go with that, they could have wrote that. So Becky taps to Nia, right? Not Nia. Becky taps to Asuka in the opener. Fans are upset. She didn't show up in the female Rumble, right? Fans are upset. Like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this to us. Imagine then, tap to Asuka, doesn't show up in the female, Charlotte wins it, fans are pissed. Then she takes that spot, beating up R-Truth from behind. Even if she would have got thrown out like Nia did, you don't think that would have really said, hey, I competed with the men, now I can be called the man? They could have found a way to write her into the Ronda Charlotte feud. I'm just saying, my creative juices are flowing. You see what I mean? And that's what it's about.
I can understand your point, but
yeah,
for the fans and for TV and for everything else, for her to be the darling and for her to get the babyface pop and for her to stand there in the middle of the ring, that's what they needed. Because what happened on Monday Night Raw, there comes the man looking for Ronda Rousey. She stood there and the people went berserk. Ronda Rousey became 100% heel. And I'm going to tell you, I think they're making Ronda Rousey into too much of a wrestler and not much of a fighter, and not using her MMA at all. Because if you looked at the spots that Sasha Banks and Ronda Rousey did. She was too choreographed and she wasn't being herself. Too many jumps, too many flips, too many. Wasn't a Ronda Rousey, let me kick your ass thing. It was a wrestling, let's see my athleticism thing. And they're getting away from that with Ronda Rousey.
Yeah. And back to Nia, like, who knows how far? I don't think they're actually going to do an intergender match. I think they just teased it. They put Nia in the spot because she was the biggest, and now she meddled a little bit with Ambrose on Raw, but I think that'll fade away. But since you brought Ronda up, why are they having her talk so much? She's clearly, I know she's been in movies. When you're in a movie, there's cut. You can do it until you do it right. When you're live in WWE, she's vulnerable on the mic. We know that from her ESPN interviews and that she gets rattled. They should not let her talk much. It should be quick to the point, and then she should be going after wanting to fight like you suggested. So
You're 100% right. I think the only thing you should be saying is, I'm going to rip your effing arm off and go to work. When she sits there and charged the exchange, Becky Lynch made her look stupid and sat there with that smug. Ronda didn't friggin' drop her, didn't slap her, didn't nose up to her, and sounded too kiddish. Wasn't meant.
Nope.
Didn't feel it.
Meanwhile, Becky's sucker punching everybody that's in her face. She sucker punched Charlotte. She sucker punched Carmella, or no, one of the Iconics in the last couple weeks. That's her new thing. I wonder if Fit Finlay taught her that. She'll be doing a face-to-face in the ring with someone, and two weeks in a row now, Becky did a sucker punch or a jab to the throat. That should be what Ronda does, but no, Becky Lynch is giving that. And again, we can't deny Becky's popular. She's popular. She's popular, and they're going to have to try to run with it and make some money off of her. That's a whole nother. We could talk about how WWE's could either succeed or fail with Becky Lynch. That could be a whole show one week. Because
All right, Mr. Stallworth.
I'm boring you? No. Am I boring you?
No, you're not boring me at all. We are on time limit. We have killed off almost an hour, guys. I hope you enjoyed this show of Getting Color. I thought it was very interesting. And the thing that's great about our concept is we never talk about what we're going to talk about before the show. We just run with it, and that's the way we do it here. And I think it was one hell of a show, and this just goes off of my week of research and my week of reading and, getting into my Meltzers. I got them out there. They call me. Anyway, David, what kind of plugs do you have for the Big Vito Brand on Getting Color, your new show? You're co-hosting one of the hottest shows on the network. We are on Alexa. We are on a lot of different avenues. So, David, plug away.
Well, okay, so on the BigVitoBrand.com, I do Virtue's Brand of Wrestling, so that's going to be up on Tuesdays now. I do Virtue's Rage and the No DQ review over on NoDQ.com. Then I do something else for that Andre Corbeil guy on his website. We all know who he is. So if you want to find out exactly all my videos, columns, whatever, just go on my Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. I'm going to stuff. So just go there.
All right. Now, Voice of Reason, can you come in and give me some plugs? Voice of Reason. Everybody listen. It's coming. Hold on. Voice of Reason.
Yes, Big Vito. If everybody wants to check us out online, we are at thebigvitobrand.com. You can also find us on social media on the Big Vito Brand and also Reality Capital T Spiller. We are on Alexa and Fire devices with our podcast. You can go and check us out under Flash Briefing and set us up for a daily flash briefing, or you could just look under podcast and type in the Big Vito Brand. Also go to anchor.fm/the Big Vito Brand, click the purple support button, help us out, support our podcast. We would love to have you on board with the Big Vito Brand. Go ahead, Big V.
All right, now that's a wrap for Getting Color this week. David, you did an excellent job Thank you very much. Take a bow for yourself because of my, that's going to be up to take a bow. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I do hear feedback on myself, so we're gonna have to, when we go off the air here, we're gonna have to figure that out. Maybe it's just on my end.
All right. All right. Listen, guys, that was Getting Color for this week. Catch it, love it, live it. This is Big Vito signing off. Peace, baby.